What if the first beauty contest didn't happen in front of a mirror, but beside a fire under the stars? What if the original standards of beauty weren't set by magazines, but by survival, by fertility, by the shape of a woman's hips, or the symmetry of her face? Forget everything you know about filters and fashion, because today we're going back 30,000 years to find out who were considered the most beautiful women of the Stone Age, and why. 25,000 years ago, the world was a raw, untamed wilderness. No skyscrapers, no smartphones, no internet. Just dense forests, towering mountains, and predators lurking in the shadows. Scattered across vast landscapes were small tribes of early humans, our ancestors. They weren't so different from us. They loved, they feared, they struggled, and they connected. There were no dating apps, no heart emojis, no filtered selfies. In those days, attracting a mate didn't depend on how many followers you had. It depended on something far more ancient: presence. Presence in the hunt. Presence in the story. Presence around the fire. At night, when the day's hunt was over and the stars blanketed the sky, the tribe would gather around a crackling fire. It was more than warmth. It was the beating heart of the community. And often, at the center of that circle, stood a man. Not always the strongest, not always the best hunter. But when he opened his mouth and told stories, the fire seemed to burn brighter. People leaned in. Women listened. He had something no one else had: the power of connection. But what about beauty? What if the first beauty contest didn't happen in front of a mirror, but beside that same fire? What if our ancestors didn't define beauty through magazine covers or celebrity culture, but by survival, fertility, and harmony with nature? Forget everything you know about filters, trends, or fashion standards. We're going back 30,000 years to uncover a deeper truth. Who were considered the most beautiful women of the Stone Age? And why? Beauty. Before civilization. Long before cities rose and empires fell, before the first bricks were laid or the first words carved into stone, there was attraction. Not the kind we see today, manufactured, filtered, and sold, but something raw, primal, innate. It wasn't abstract. It wasn't about luxury, art, or glamour. Beauty was something far more essential. It was biological. It was evolutionary. It was practical. Back then, beauty wasn't framed by magazine covers or digital filters. It wasn't defined by makeup brands, designer clothes, or the number of likes on a photo. It was determined by nature and necessity. In the wild, unpredictable world of early humanity, life was survival. Every sunrise brought a new challenge: to find food, to avoid predators, to stay warm, to stay alive. In that harsh environment, not all individuals were seen the same. Some stood out. Some were more desirable, not because of wealth or status, but because of what they represented: strength, health, fertility, and the potential to thrive. Among early nomadic tribes, even before spoken language fully developed, preferences began to emerge. Patterns of attraction were already forming. And slowly, subtly, the earliest ideas of beauty were born, not as a concept of luxury, but as a marker of value. A silent signal that said, this person can create life. This person can survive. Some women, more than others, were admired and sought after. They were seen as bearers of the future, not just because they could give birth, but because they showed signs of being able to do it successfully. Beauty, in that context, wasn't superficial. It was deeply functional. Smooth skin might have meant health. A certain body shape could suggest fertility. Facial symmetry could indicate strong genetics. The way someone moved, smiled, or even stood might reveal strength, youth, and vitality. These early signs of beauty weren't invented by culture. They were encoded by evolution. Silent messages passed between humans long before the first love poem was ever written. So when we ask, what counted as beautiful back then? We're really asking, what did our ancestors value in the people they chose to survive with? And the answer lies in something far older than fashion. The biology of attraction. Stone Age beauty standards. When we imagine the Stone Age, we often picture rugged people huddled around fires, dressed in animal skins, braving the elements with primitive tools. But even in this brutal world, where danger was constant and survival was uncertain, standards of beauty existed. They weren't spoken, they weren't written down, but they were felt, understood, passed on, not through language, but through instinct. Beauty in the Stone Age wasn't about fashion or fame. It was a silent, subconscious language shaped by the most powerful force on Earth: natural selection. In a world without mirrors, makeup, or magazines, what made someone attractive? What qualities caught the eye of potential mates? The answers are older than civilization itself. 1. Fertility and health were everything. In a time where the average life expectancy was short and infant mortality was high, the ability to produce healthy offspring was the most valuable trait a person could offer. For women, this meant that visible signs of fertility were often equated with beauty. A fuller figure, for example, wasn't seen as overweight. It was a sign of health, nourishment, and reproductive capability. Body fat meant stored energy, an evolutionary advantage during periods of famine. Wide hips suggested the physical ability to survive childbirth. Clear skin indicated the absence of disease or parasites. Shiny hair, bright eyes, and a symmetrical face were subtle, but powerful signals of vitality. 2. The Venus. Figurines weren't just art, they were ideals. Across Europe and Asia, archaeologists have unearthed small statues known as Venus figurines, some dating back over 25,000 years. These carvings depict women with exaggerated breasts, wide hips, and rounded stomachs. They weren't accidental. They were representations of what ancient people found valuable, what they found beautiful. These figures weren't just spiritual objects. They were icons of idealized femininity, the prehistoric equivalent of beauty standards. Not airbrushed perfection, but reproductive abundance. 3. Survival signaled attraction. Beyond physical appearance, beauty in the Stone Age was also about function. Could this person survive? Could they adapt? Could they protect their offspring? A woman's physical ability to gather food, tend to children, or manage a fire might make her more attractive than facial features alone. Likewise, expressions of confidence, calmness, and resilience, even without language, were seen, felt, and interpreted. A woman who handled threats with composure, or who maintained social bonds within the tribe, gained status, and with it, desirability. 4. Scent, movement, and voice. Primitive but powerful. Modern science has shown that scent plays a huge role in attraction. Pheromones, chemicals we unconsciously emit, help us identify genetic compatibility. It's likely that even in the Stone Age, scent played a major role in mate selection. The way someone moved, stood, or even spoke, or vocalized, could give off signals of youth, energy, and coordination, all signs of good genes and strong health. 5. There was no one type of beauty. Importantly, standards varied across tribes and regions. What one group saw as desirable might differ from another. Some valued robustness, others agility. Some emphasized certain skin tones, facial shapes, or even adornments like scarification, piercings, or body paint. Beauty wasn't just biological, it was also tribal and contextual. In the end, Stone Age beauty wasn't shallow. It was strategic. It wasn't about trends, it was about timeless survival signals. And though we've built skyscrapers, written symphonies, and invented the internet, Many of those ancient standards still whisper beneath the surface of our modern minds. Because long before civilization, there was beauty. The Venus figurines, stone-carved ideals, scattered across Ice Age Europe and parts of Asia, buried under layers of earth and time, archaeologists have discovered mysterious, powerful symbols from our prehistoric past. The Venus figurines. These small, hand-carved statues, some no larger than a palm, depict women with exaggerated breasts, wide hips, round bellies, and sometimes detailed pubic areas. What they lack in facial detail or individual identity, they make up for in raw symbolism. But what were they? Why did so many different tribes, across vast distances and thousands of years, carve such similar female forms? And what does that tell us about how early humans understood beauty, fertility, and the female body? 1. Beyond art, icons of survival. The term Venus was coined by modern archaeologists, referencing the Roman goddess of beauty. But the original creators of these figurines lived 20,000 to 30,000 years earlier. They didn't worship Venus. They didn't even know of gods in the way we do today. To them, the female body, particularly one capable of bearing and nourishing life, was not just sacred, it was central to survival. In a world where death was always near, the ability to give birth and feed a child could mean the continuation of a family, a tribe, a lineage. The rounded forms of these figurines weren't merely aesthetic, they were practical ideals. 2. Universality across tribes. What makes the Venus figurines so fascinating is their consistency. From France to Russia, Austria to Siberia, people who never met and never shared language still carved the same kind of woman. Why? Because they were tapping into something universal, an instinctual understanding of what was necessary, valuable, and worthy of reverence. Across different geographies and climates, the image of the full-bodied, fertile woman kept emerging. This wasn't fashion. This was evolutionary psychology, chiseled into stone. 3. Beauty as power. These figurines weren't toys. They weren't decorations. Many were found buried with care, placed in symbolic positions, or kept in areas likely used for rituals. It's likely that the women they represented were more than just attractive. They were powerful. Perhaps they symbolized goddesses, mothers, or ancestral spirits. Or perhaps they were a kind of Stone Age aspiration, an embodiment of what women wanted to become and what men sought in mates. In this way, beauty was more than skin deep. It was life-giving, protective, and even magical. The absence of faces, the presence of meaning. One of the most curious aspects of Venus figurines is what they don't show: faces. Most have little to no facial detail. Instead, attention is placed on the breasts, belly, and hips. This tells us something important. These weren't meant to represent individuals. They were symbols, almost archetypes, timeless expressions of womanhood, not specific women. It also suggests that in early human culture, identity was less important than function and form. Beauty wasn't about uniqueness, it was about biological purpose. 5. The psychological echo. Even today, echoes of these ancient ideals persist. Modern studies in evolutionary psychology show that humans are still subconsciously drawn to many of the same traits: symmetry, reproductive indicators, signals of youth and vitality. The Venus figurines are a prehistoric mirror, one that reflects something deep inside us. They remind us that before makeup, Photoshop, or celebrity culture, there was already an idea of idealized beauty. But it was raw, earthy, elemental, real women of the Stone Age. So what did they really look like? Thanks to modern forensic science, we've reconstructed the faces and bodies of real Stone Age women. They don't all resemble Venus figurines or modern fashion icons. Take the woman of Bras-Empoi, a 25,000-year-old ivory bust. Unlike the exaggerated figurines, she has delicate facial features, a hint of a hairstyle, and a calm expression. It's one of the earliest realistic portrayals of a human face. Digital reconstructions of ancient Homo sapiens show strong jaws, wide noses, deep-set eyes, and robust cheekbones. Their faces told stories of endurance. Their bodies were lean, short, often under 5 feet, but muscular, adapted to a life of constant motion and survival. They weren't chasing aesthetics. They were living, gathering, hunting, raising children. And in doing so, they were beautiful in a raw, functional, powerful way. What about the men? Attraction wasn't one-sided. Stone Age men also had to prove themselves, not with poetry or flowers, but with survival skills. They had to earn the attention of women. Anthropologists suggest 3 main strategies. Provisioning. The best hunters brought back food. Meat was shared, and that generosity boosted a man's status and desirability. Skill and intelligence. Crafting tools, making fire, navigating the terrain. These abilities weren't just practical, they were sexy. Social status. A man who was respected, who had friends and allies, stood out. He had protection, influence, and attention. Women weren't passive. Even in early societies, they chose. They valued loyalty, strength, consistency. The Stone Age version of "he's funny and good with kids" was very real. The psychology of attraction, then and now. Here's the kicker. The fundamental psychology of attraction hasn't changed much. We're still drawn to symmetry, health, confidence, emotional warmth. What's changed? Culture, technology, commerce. Modern media bombards us with impossible ideals. Ultra-thin bodies that signal weakness, not fertility. Photoshopped faces that erase human texture. Beauty routines that cost thousands, but add little to real connection. Would a Stone Age woman recognize today's beauty standards? Maybe not. Because for her, beauty wasn't about perfection. It was about survival, adaptability, contribution to the group. Were they beautiful by today's standards? If you saw a Paleolithic woman today, you might not recognize her as beautiful in the conventional sense. She might look rugged or different. But in her world, she was everything. Her body was built for climbing, running, giving birth. Her face bore the strength of her lineage. Her presence was value, not filtered illusion. So maybe the question isn't, would we find them beautiful today? But rather, have we lost touch with what beauty truly is? What prehistoric beauty teaches us today? Here's the deepest truth. Beauty is not fixed. It's not skin deep. It's not modern. It's ancestral. In a firelit cave, beauty was movement, contribution, warmth. It was the way someone helped with the children, the way they laughed, the way they endured. It was real. So the next time you look in the mirror and wonder, "Am I beautiful?" Remember, you are the descendant of survivors, of people who lived, loved, and passed down not just their genes, but their sense of worth. You come from strength, from grace, from the oldest kind of beauty there is. Maybe true beauty is older than time. Beauty existed before civilization, and it still lives in us today. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. See you in the next video.